Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics.
I want to talk about routines and mental health today. I think that we as professionals spend very little and not enough time discussing with our clients the importance of working on changing routines. Now, when you're really motivated, sometimes you can change that routine around for a couple of weeks right away. And so I don't want anybody listening to this to think that you've got to change everything right now. But I do want you starting to think about how much your routines affect mental health. I think that physical health is something we have control over that affects our mental health, and our routines is something that we have direct and instant control over that affects our mental health. Whether you're depressed or you have an anxiety disorder or you have been diagnosed with ADHD, your routine is something that you can absolutely take control over and focus on, while some of the other processes for battling that mental health issue unfold during a longer process. I want to make a few points in this podcast. I don't want anybody to think that I don't understand that our routines, while we control them, that there's a lot of factors, and sometimes you got to make a sacrifice, and we've got people who just need to provide for their family, and their routine, their overbooked routine, is out of desperation and the need to find funds. And so I want you to understand, I get that just changing a routine is impossible for some people, but you want to focus on what you do have control over and where you can make certain changes. When you make small little incremental changes for your physical health, for your routine, your sleep, what happens is over time, you see that those little tiny steps towards change have big effects on your mental health down the road. And it's hard to stay motivated to make these little steps because you don't see an instant change usually in that moment that you decide to make the change. And so in trying to battle or improve your mental health, it is important that you make the changes regardless of the instant outcome that you experience. You make the changes because you know that that's what's healthy and that's what's right. The first thing that I want to talk about in terms of routine is overbooking. I talk to people who have nothing booked and they isolate, and then I talk to people who have something scheduled every day, all day long. Now, there are some givens, school and work. I think a lot of us, if not most of us, have experienced that feeling that there's just not enough time to get the things done that we want to get done in the day. But overbooking, I see it in families who have become big into sports. I see it in families who struggle in terms of trying to make enough money to support the family in the way that they want to support their family. I see it in teens who are really anxious about making sure that they do everything that they need to do to get into college. And I could go on and on about the triggers or the reasons that people overbook themselves. Even people who overbook themselves, when I confront them, they are able to see that the way that they are living day in and day out could be tidied up, right? Not everything that they've booked is necessary and important, or even sometimes the things that they've booked themselves doing or participating in, they realize, oh my gosh, I know deep down that's an unhealthy thing for me to participate in or do on a daily basis. Overbooking is something that creates anxiety. And it's interesting because in working with clients, I've realized that a lot of people overbook because of fear and anxiety. It's such an interesting dynamic. People overbook themselves so that they don't miss out on things, so that they have every opportunity for their children and for themselves. They overbook themselves to make more money, to create opportunities for college, to make sure that their child is as good as they can be for a certain sport, and so on and so forth. that dynamic where we overbook sometimes out of fear and angst, while that overbooking creates anxiety, is such an interesting dynamic. And it's important that you take stock of all the time that you actually have. How many hours in a week do you have? And some of that time should be dedicated to just relaxing. Some of that time should be dedicated to work or school. Some of that time should be dedicated to connecting with others, with family, with friends, etc. Some of that time should be focused on physical health. Some of that time should be focused on spirituality. And some of that time should be focused on recreation and hobbies. Now, you can kind of double dip with some of this stuff. And what I've described is the 6 pillars. When you take a look at the 6 pillars, if you are totally heavy in one area and neglecting completely another area, don't justify it. Don't let coaches and other people, teachers, guilt you into thinking that it's got to be completely overwhelming. For yourself and for your family, think about what is going to be healthy in the long run. And don't forget that connection and relaxation is going to be an important piece of your life and your routine if you want to have positive mental health, and if you want to create a resiliency for overcoming mental health issues if you run into getting and developing a mental health issue. The overbooking comes from often a desire to succeed and angst about the future, and nobody really wants to admit this, but a fear of missing out. Right? And so don't let those things drive you to overbook. The next piece of routines that I see that becomes really unhealthy is the underbooking. We want to balance. There are some people, some teens, some families that don't have anything going on. And a lot of times they don't know where to start. They don't like things. I hear things like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I like to do. I don't like to do anything. I don't have people to do it with. I don't want to just go do things on my own. And I'm feeling down every day. And so there's various reasons that somebody might not have a decently busy schedule. But having a busy schedule that is not overbooked is really important for mental health. We must have things that we are participating. And again, I bring the 6 pillars into it. We want to be putting time, effort, energy into our mental health. We want to be making sure that we spend time in either a career or educating ourselves. I don't care if you're in summer months from school or if you're a retired fireman. You always want to put at least some time, effort, and energy into either educating yourself on something or participating in some sort of career. Not saying it's got to be 40 hours a week, but some of your time should be spent there. And then we've got your physical health. Look, we all know that focusing on nutrition, going to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor, and making sure that you are getting physical exercise is just absolutely imperative for good mental health. Just those 3 things alone take hours throughout the week and on a daily basis. Then you've got focusing on spirituality. And I'm not telling you how to, but whether you're Christian or you're struggling to figure out your spirituality or you're an atheist, the spirituality pursuit is focusing on your relationship to others. It's focusing on higher power. It's figuring out of purpose, and it's figuring out your morals and your values and who you want to be and how you want to be in the world. And it might include, like I said, going to church like it does for me, or it might include volunteering, or it might include reading about spirituality. I don't care who you are, there should be some time, effort, and energy spent in the spirituality pillar of life. And then we've got the focus on your relationships. And some of you are saying, well, I've got relationships with my family, but they bug me and I don't really have any friends. Well, I don't know how, but through your other pillars, especially the last one, which is not the last one for any reason, hobbies, you can pursue other relationships. You cannot create relationships if you're not participating in the world. If you find that you are somebody who's isolating, don't look for a hobby through which you can meet other people. Don't look for a hobby that you're passionate about. Just look for a hobby. Just try stuff out. But underbooking and isolating becomes really damaging to your mental health. And if there are mental health problems, that isolating, that underbooking, and it's not just isolating, I'm not talking to people, it's I am not busy with my time. I am not engaged in activities throughout the day. That is really important. It's something that you do have control over. And if you tell yourself, well, I'm just not motivated to do things. Well, motivation is kind of this false pursuit a lot of times, because sure, we get super motivated when we have a crisis or something like that, and we want to change our routines, and or we feel really down, right? So in those crisis moments and desperate moments, we get motivation for making change. But the problem is that change and that motivation is not sustainable. Sustainable motivation comes from having a healthy routine rather than coming from a place of desperation. For instance, if on a daily basis I wake up and I go to the gym, I might not feel motivated every day. In fact, I might have terrible workouts some days. But in making that a routine, what happens is through that process, I will have ebbs and flow of motivation. And motivation will come from that routine. And while it might not stay completely, it builds and it builds and it builds. And that motivation comes more often in a more timely, sustainable manner because it's coming from my doing the work to create a routine without waiting for motivation. I want you to remember that you are not alone. If you find yourself feeling stuck, that's the way we describe it, right? I'm stuck. I know what I should do, but I can't get myself to do it. I hate to tell you, but there's no magical way to do it. Sure, you can try pills and you can try some other things, but at the end of the day, it's putting one foot in front of the other and making small changes towards that major change that you want to make. The next issue regarding routines that I want to talk about is not having purpose-driven routine. And that's kind of a way that I describe it to people. It's a concept that I've kind of come up with over the years to try to communicate to clients that in building a routine, you should have purpose. It's kind of like in any therapy relationship. When you go seek therapy, your therapist has what's called a treatment plan. You have goals that you are working toward. When you have a purpose-driven routine, you want to keep, why am I doing this in mind? It might be part of your routine. If it's just watching TV and relaxing, it's, hey, I need to debrief. I need to turn my mind off. Part of your routine is waking up early and brushing your teeth. Well, it's because you want to keep your teeth cleaned. And I know that sounds a little bit flippant, but the various purposes throughout the routine range from I want to keep my teeth clean or I want to relax to I want to build an identity and a career. All of these small to big purposes that kind of drive and are the end plan for your routine, what happens is those begin to build up your identity over time, and you have more control, when you think of it this way, over your identity, which results in more control over addressing mental health issues. And so having a purpose-driven routine can mean major change in terms of your ability to overcome mental health issues or to prevent mental health issues. At the end of the day, when we have built our identity on purpose that we find, we are building an identity that is both healthy, sustainable, and resilient to things like trauma and resilient to disappointment, resilient to being down and grief, etc. I want you all to really think about what small to big purposes do I have that's built into my routine? Why? Why have I made this a part of my routine? And when you ask that question, sometimes you end up taking out whole pieces of your routine and you end up beginning to build new routines because you realize, wow, okay, this is not my actual purpose, the purpose that I really want. Those are kind of some of the larger concepts I want to talk about regarding routine and mental health. And then there's a few kind of more poignant points I want to make. Number one is getting up late. if you get up late, you are more susceptible to mental health issues. I know some people will argue with that, and some people can't help having to wake up late because they have a job as a nurse or something else where they have to work nights and they've got to sleep when they can sleep. And I get that. And I'm going to be honest, for a season that might be okay, but you cannot sustain that. At least most people cannot sustain that for a lifetime. Again, there are some anomalies, but overall, we function best when we get up early in the morning and we go to bed at a decent time at night. As simple as that is, I know that's not some PhD level thinking, but there is some truth to the whole cycle of the earth, and people talk about circadian rhythms, and we do have control over our circadian rhythms, but getting up when the sun's coming up and going to bed not too long after the sun goes down on a regular basis does result in better mental health. Within that, when you get up and you become active, when you have a routine for kind of waking yourself up that includes brushing your teeth, washing your face, getting ready for the day, you are participating in something that will increase the likelihood that you maintain healthy mental health. Just the act of getting ready can be so important. I'll never forget one time I had somebody that I was working with, and I asked them to get up by 7 a.m. every day and get ready. When they asked me what I meant get ready as though you're going to work. And they said, but I don't have a job. I said, I know. And they said, I didn't get into school. I'm not going to school. I don't have a job. Why would I do that? And I asked them to just entertain me. I wanted them for 2 weeks straight, every day, even on the weekends, to get up by 7 a.m. and get ready as though they were going to work. And a few things happened when they did that. Number one, I'm going to be honest, they got a little bit frustrated in the beginning of this because it was work that they didn't want to do and it seemed totally pointless. But they did it anyways. And so they got up, they got ready, they put their makeup on, they did all the stuff that they would do if they needed to go to work. And the next step was, I want you to do that and then leave. I don't care if you leave for 2 minutes. I don't care if you leave for 5 minutes. I don't care if you leave for 5 hours. Get up, get ready, and leave. I didn't give them any more direction after that. It was just a 2-week period of get up and get ready. And they did report, okay, it feels good to get ready, but I don't know what I'm doing with my day. And sometimes I kind of feel like it was a total waste of my time. And then it was get up, get ready, and get out. I don't care why you get out. I don't care how long you get out for. Get out of the house. I don't care what you do. Get up, get ready, get out. Get up, get ready, get out. And towards the end of the next 2 weeks of get up, get ready, and get out, what happened was and I can't remember where they went. They were going somewhere and they had run into somebody and had some sort of conversation during this whole process that had given them some motivation to check some things out in terms of job and training. And then they would get up, get out, and go to the same place every day. And then that shifted into getting up, getting out, and exploring different opportunities for their life. And then I remember they stopped doing it and they reverted all the way back after several weeks or maybe a couple months of doing this. And I reminded them, I said, you can always go back to what was working. And they said exactly this. It didn't work because I'm still not working and my life is exactly the same. And I said, well, it was working because you kept reporting to me that you felt better for a few hours and you actually had a conversation with somebody that resulted in motivation for a short period of time. And they kind of said, okay, fine, I'll give you that. And it took them a little while, but they got back into that routine. And I don't remember how long it took, but at some point that routine kept growing. And it got to the point where they did end up getting some sort of either an internship or a training opportunity that resulted in them having busy days. I'm not going to tell you, oh my gosh, it turned out beautifully right away. And then they had a job and then they had money and then they went on their merry way and they were no longer depressed. They still had to battle the diagnosis that they were given. There were still up days and down days. But overall, they kept going back to this routine of getting up, getting ready, and getting out. And that kept building, and they could rely on that. When all was lost, they could rely on that for at least a little bit of relief rather than just staying in bed. They got really good at, when everything went bad, remembering, okay, I got to start the routine again of get up, get ready, get out. And with that routine and some other processes of therapy and some other things that they participated in and then built into the routine, they terminated treatment. It got to the point that they couldn't do treatment anymore because they were too busy with a career that they had finally built. They were too busy with things like friends and hobbies. And again, it still took a very significant amount of time for them to get to that point. But the jumping off point was building into their routine first thing in the morning, getting up at 7 a.m., getting ready, and getting out the door. And they failed at doing that many times. They would try to do that, then they'd go back to bed. But the point is they kept trying to get that routine down. I hope that if you're listening to this and you have an issue with routine, you understand that you make a goal for your routine, and then you keep trying, and then you'll fail, and then you keep trying. And other things start to move and happen along the way that you can also put your focus in on. There's another piece of this that is pretty important, and that's compartmentalization. Okay, so when you're dealing with routine, the plan that you set up for your daily life helps you compartmentalize. It helps you know, it helps your mind know when to deal with certain aspects of your life and when you've got to focus on something else. Now, somebody who only goes to work and then comes home and watches TV and doesn't have much else to their life, they are more likely to bring home the issues of work. Somebody who goes to work, has a routine for working out or exercising, maybe has some hobbies, has some specific family time that they've dedicated. What happens is you are now compartmentalizing when you are going to deal with certain issues. So if you have family issues, you're not as likely to bring it to work. You're more likely to deal with it during that family time and know that there's an end to that. So you've got to make some healthy headway. If you have something beyond just work to focus on and you're not obsessed and addicted to your work, what happens is you're more likely to leave it at work just because you get distracted. You've got other things that you need to move on to once you walk out those office doors. A healthy routine helps you compartmentalize your life issues, which results in less anxiety, it results in less depression, it results in the ability to problem solve and cope with issues as they come at you. Some of you are saying, well, you're minimizing. You don't get how important my work is, or that my work calls me at home, et cetera. And that's a whole nother conversation, because if you're going to have a healthy routine, you're going to have healthy boundaries. And so as you build, or try to build, this healthy routine for yourself and your family, you're going to run into obstacles where you realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to set boundaries. I'm going to have to say no to some things. I'm going to have to shift, and I might not be able to participate in this over there because I want to be healthier over here. And so you end up realizing that you do need to make sacrifices in order to have a healthy routine. You do need to have healthy boundaries and be consistent with those boundaries and be able to talk about those boundaries with the people that you care about. The last point that I want to make about routine is a lot of people, especially in this day and age, are, excuse my language, but hell-bent on being comfortable at all times. Comfort does not result in being happier. I know that sounds wild, but there's a concept I talk about often, which is being comfortably miserable. But comfort does not result in good mental health. And a lot of times when you're building a good routine, part of that routine is really uncomfortable. For instance, it is not easy to get up early in the morning and get your body moving when you're still feeling groggy. And if your pursuit is to be comfortable at all times, you're going to have a really hard time building a routine that is structured for mental health. Being comfortable cannot be the drive of your life. It cannot be the drive of your routines. It cannot be the purpose. I'm not saying I don't ever want you to be comfortable, but that isn't the point. You're pursuing, and that brings me back to, you're pursuing a purpose-driven life and routine. And that's what leads to more contentment. That's what leads to that happiness that is sustainable even through really difficult things in your life. Okay? I want to remind you that in that means that you are not waiting for motivation to come your way in order to build healthy routines. You have got to have a routine and a life that's driven by healthy habits. The routines create the motivation. Don't wait for desperate motivation, because that never results in the help that you want or the improvements and growth that you want. Create healthy habits, healthy routine. Be willing to get uncomfortable and be patient in waiting for the payoff or that contentment that comes along with having those healthy habits and routine. I hope this helps, and I know that I've only given you little snippets of things, but try to find somewhere to begin.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production. Hosted by Brandon Jaffe. Edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson. Music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.